If you had told me 3 years ago that I would lose my husband, my business, my home, and almost my children all in the same year, I would have told you that was impossible, because I was careful. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Now, hit that like button if you enjoy stories. And let me tell you how this all started, because sometimes the best revenge is just letting people reveal exactly who they really are. I was smart, I was loyal, I was the kind of woman who checked every lock, saved every penny, loved with everything she had. And none of it mattered, because the one person I thought was protecting me was the one quietly opening every door for someone else to walk through. His name was Marcus, and for 11 years I believed he was my partner, my best friend, the man I would grow old with. I was wrong about all of it. But stay with me, because this story doesn't end with me crying on the floor. It ends with me sitting across from him in a courtroom while he handed over the deed to the beach house he bought with my money to give to her. I want you to hear exactly how I got there. Let me take you back to the beginning, because you need to understand what I built before you can understand what he tried to steal. I grew up in a small town in Georgia. My mother worked double shifts at a diner, and my father, well, he was in and out of our lives more than he was in. I learned very early that if I wanted something, I had to build it myself. By the time I was 26, I had worked my way through college, graduated with a business degree, and started a small event planning company out of my apartment. I called it Magnolia & Co., named after the tree my grandmother planted in her front yard. It was tiny at first. I planned birthday parties, baby showers, one very chaotic quinceañera where the birthday girl's ex showed up uninvited, but that's a different story. And then I met Marcus. He came into my life at a charity gala I was coordinating. He was tall, well-dressed, worked in finance, and had this way of listening to you like you were the only person in the room. I fell for it completely. We dated for 2 years before he proposed. He got down on one knee at a rooftop restaurant. I still remember the way the city lights looked behind him. I said yes before he even finished the sentence. We got married in the spring. 200 guests, magnolia arrangements everywhere, because of course I planned my own wedding. My mother cried the entire ceremony. I thought I was living the life I had worked so hard to build. But here's the thing about building a life with someone you don't fully know. Every brick you place together is a brick they could one day throw at you. By year 3 of our marriage, Magnolia & Co. had grown into a real company. I had 6 full-time employees, a downtown office, and contracts with 3 major hotels in the city. We were doing weddings, corporate events, charity galas, the kind of work I had always dreamed about. And Marcus? Marcus was my biggest supporter. Or so I thought. He helped me handle the financial side. He said he wanted to take that burden off my plate. I thought it was love. I thought it was partnership. It was access. Around year 5, we had our first child, a boy we named Eli, and then 16 months later, our daughter Grace. I was exhausted and happy and so in love with our little family that I barely noticed the first cracks beginning to form. Marcus started working late, a lot. He traveled more for work. He became quieter at home. Not cold exactly, but distant. Like a window that still lets in light but doesn't open anymore. I told myself it was stress. I told myself every marriage goes through phases. I told myself I was being paranoid when I noticed he had started sleeping with his phone face down. I told myself a lot of lies, because the truth was too big to hold. The day I found out was a Tuesday in October. Ordinary. I remember thinking, on the way to drop the kids at school, that I needed to pick up more coffee filters. That's how normal everything still felt. I came home to an empty house. Marcus was at work. I had a rare, free morning between client meetings, and I decided to do something I hadn't done in months. Just sit quietly with a cup of tea and breathe. And then his laptop chimed from across the room. He had left it open on the kitchen counter. I assumed it was a work notification. It wasn't. The name at the top of the email thread was Vanessa Holt, and the subject line said, "Our new place is perfect. I can't wait to show you." I don't know why I clicked it. I think part of me already knew. The email was from a woman I had never heard of. Inside was a photograph of a beach house, beautiful, modern, right on the water. She had written, "The master closet is already half yours. Hurry home to me." I sat there for a very long time, not crying, just reading and reading again, and then scrolling back through weeks and months of emails I wasn't supposed to see. They had been together for 2.5 years. 2.5 years, while I was building our company, while I was pregnant with Grace, while I was recovering from my C-section, while I was sitting across from him at our dining room table every night asking about his day. He was already living another life. The beach house? He had put a down payment on it 6 months earlier. The money? It came from Magnolia & Co., from our joint business account that he managed. He had used my company's money to buy a house for another woman. Now, some women in my position might have confronted him immediately, screamed, thrown things, packed bags. I thought about all of that. And then I thought about something else entirely. I thought, if he went to all this trouble to hide it, then I need to go to even more trouble to expose it. I closed the laptop, I finished my tea, and I made a phone call to the best divorce attorney in the state. My attorney's name was Patricia Chen. She had been practicing family law for 22 years and had the kind of calm, precise energy that made you feel like everything was going to be handled, even when nothing felt okay. I walked into her office and laid everything on the table: the emails, the beach house, what I suspected about the money. I watched her face carefully as I talked, looking for alarm, for hesitation, for any sign that I was overreacting. She just nodded and said, "How soon can you get me access to 3 years of business account statements?" What we found over the next 3 weeks made my blood run cold. Marcus hadn't just taken money for the beach house. For 3 years, he had been systematically redirecting funds from Magnolia & Co. Small amounts at first, careful enough that I might not notice. A vendor payment that went to an account I didn't recognize, a consulting fee to a company that didn't exist, a business expense reimbursement for trips I had never approved. In total, he had moved just over $240,000 out of my company. $240,000. Money I had earned, money my employees had helped build, money that was supposed to keep the lights on, pay salaries, fund the next year of growth. He had been stealing from me, slowly, carefully, over years, and I had trusted him so completely that I never looked. Patricia looked at me across her desk and said, "Amanda, I want you to understand something. You are not just a wife with grounds for divorce. You are a victim of financial fraud. What your husband has done is a crime." That word, crime, hung in the air between us. I had spent weeks feeling like a fool, like someone who had been asleep at the wheel of her own life. But in that moment, something shifted. I wasn't just hurt, I wasn't just betrayed, I was angry. And I was done. Now, at this point in the story, Marcus still had no idea that I knew anything. He came home every night, he kissed the kids, he asked me about my day, and I smiled, I answered, I cooked dinner, because Patricia had told me the most important thing. Don't let him know you know, not yet. Let us build the case first. So that's exactly what I did. I smiled, and I waited, and I documented everything. The next 6 weeks were the hardest of my life, and I want to be honest with you about that because I think so often in these stories, the woman is portrayed as this fearless, untouchable warrior the moment she decides to fight back. That wasn't me, not at first. There were nights I lay in bed next to Marcus, knowing everything I knew, and cried silently into my pillow while he slept 2 feet away. There were mornings I sat in my car in the school parking lot after dropping the kids off and just fell apart for 10 minutes before putting myself back together and walking into my office. Grief doesn't wait for you to be ready. It shows up wherever it wants. And I was grieving 11 years. A marriage I thought was real. A partner I thought I had. A future I had planned that was built on nothing. But I kept going because I had 2 children who needed me to keep going. While I was grieving in private, Patricia and her team were building our case. A forensic accountant reconstructed 3 years of financial records. We identified every fraudulent transaction. We traced the down payment on the beach house directly back to Magnolia & Co. funds. We documented the wire transfers. We got the names of the shell accounts. At the same time, I quietly began doing something else. I started separating my business accounts. With Patricia's guidance, I set up new financial infrastructure for Magnolia & Co., accounts only I had access to. I began routing all incoming revenue there. I worked with my bookkeeper, a woman named Diane, who had been with me since the beginning and who cried angry tears when I told her what had happened, to make sure the company's day-to-day operations were fully in my control. I also started documenting his relationship with Vanessa. Not because I needed to, the financial fraud was already enough, but because I wanted a complete picture. A private investigator confirmed what I already knew. She also found something I hadn't known. Vanessa was not just a woman Marcus was seeing. She was someone he had introduced to mutual friends as his business partner. Someone he had taken to work events. Someone he had built an entire public-facing life with while coming home to me. He had 2 lives, completely separate, and everyone in both of them thought they were in the real one. 6 weeks after I sat in Patricia's office and said, I want to file for divorce, we were ready. Marcus still didn't know. He had planned a weekend trip, for work, he said. I knew he was going to the beach house. He kissed me goodbye on a Friday morning, he told me he loved me, and I looked at him and said, I know. While he was gone, Patricia filed the papers, and we served him on Monday morning, at his office, in front of his colleagues. I wasn't there when he was served. Patricia had advised me not to be, but I heard about it from my friend Tamara, who happened to be walking past Marcus's office building on her lunch break and saw a man in a suit hand him an envelope on the front steps. She texted me, "Was that what I think it was?" I texted back, "Yes." Her response? 3 fire emojis and a crown. That's friendship. Marcus called me 11 times that afternoon. I let it go to voicemail every time. By the time I picked up, on the 12th call, he had moved through shock and landed somewhere between panic and fury. "What is this?" he said. "Amanda, what are you doing?" And I said something I had practiced in the mirror for 6 weeks, quietly, clearly, without a single shake in my voice. I'm doing what I should have done the moment you decided my life was yours to take apart. There was a long silence, and then, "We need to talk. We can fix this. Whatever you think you know." "I don't think I know anything, Marcus. I know everything, and my attorney has the paperwork to prove it. You'll be hearing from her office. Don't call me again." I hung up. And then I sat down on my kitchen floor and cried harder than I had in years. Not because I wanted him back, not because I was scared, but because I had done it. I had actually done it, and it was real now. The life I thought I had was officially, irreversibly over. And I had chosen that. I had chosen me. What came next was 6 months of the ugliest, most exhausting legal battle I have ever been through. He hired a very expensive lawyer. He made accusations about my fitness as a mother. He tried to claim the business finances were a shared decision. He told mutual friends that I had been difficult and unstable, and that the marriage had been struggling for years. Every single move he made, Patricia had already anticipated. And that beach house? Stay with me, because that's the part of this story where things get very satisfying. Let me tell you what a divorce looks like when one person has been hiding their true nature for years and suddenly has to defend it in public. It gets ugly, fast. Marcus's attorney entered the proceedings with a strategy of denial and deflection. The financial withdrawals from my company? They claimed I had authorized them. The shell accounts? They said I was aware of them. The beach house? They said it was a joint investment property that I had agreed to. Patricia put the forensic accountant on the stand. She walked the judge through every transaction, every date, every amount, the vendor payments to companies that didn't exist, the consulting fees wired to an account registered in Vanessa's name, the down payment traced dollar by dollar back to Magnolia & Co. revenue. Marcus's attorney objected, argued, tried to reframe. The judge, a woman who had been on the family court bench for 15 years and had the energy of someone who had seen every possible variation of human dishonesty, let them finish. And then she looked at the financial records and said, "Counsel, I'm going to need you to help me understand how a consulting company with no business registration, no employees, and no publicly available services received $240,000 in payments from a small event planning firm." His attorney had no good answer. On the custody front, Marcus's claim that I was an unfit and unstable mother had even less to stand on. My children's teachers, their pediatrician, the parents of their friends, everyone who actually knew our family knew who showed up, who coached the soccer team, who sat up all night when Eli had a fever, who made the school lunches and remembered the dentist appointments and helped Grace practice reading. The judge awarded me primary custody, generous but structured visitation for Marcus, child support, and, in the asset division, the beach house. The judge ruled that because the down payment had been made with funds fraudulently diverted from my business, the property was considered acquired through those stolen funds. It was added to the marital asset pool and then awarded, in full, to me. Marcus sat across the courtroom and watched the judge sign that order. I watched him. I had spent 11 years trying to read his face, trying to understand what he was feeling. For the first time, I understood it perfectly. The divorce was finalized on a Wednesday in April. I remember because Grace had a dance recital that evening, and I sat in the third row of an elementary school auditorium, still in the blazer I had worn to the courthouse, watching my daughter spin across a stage in a pink tutu, and I cried through the whole thing. Happy tears, for the first time in almost a year, just purely, freely happy tears. Eli sat next to me and held my hand. He was 7. He didn't fully understand everything that had happened in our family that year, but he leaned over and whispered, "Is Grace good?" And I said, "She's perfect." And he nodded like that settled it and went back to watching his sister dance. Kids are incredible like that. Now, I want to talk about what happened after, because I think this is the part that doesn't get told enough in these kinds of stories. The legal win was enormous. It was necessary. It was justice in the most concrete and documented sense of the word. But it didn't make the grief go away. There is a specific kind of grief that comes from losing someone you believed in, not just the person, but your belief in them, your belief in your own judgment. There were months where I lay awake wondering how I had missed it, how I had trusted so completely, whether there had been signs I refused to see. My therapist, Dr. Nadia Moore, who I started seeing 3 months in, and who I credit with a significant portion of my survival, told me something that changed the way I thought about it. She said, "Amanda, you didn't fail to see the signs. Someone worked very hard to make sure you didn't see them. That's not your blindness. That's his deception. Those are different things." I have thought about that almost every day since. Now, do you want to know what happened to Marcus and Vanessa? Because I found out, and honestly, karma has a very dry sense of humor. It turns out that Marcus, having lost his marriage, his financial access to my company, and a significant portion of his assets in the settlement, was suddenly a much less appealing partner. Within 4 months of the divorce being finalized, Vanessa ended their relationship. I heard through a mutual connection that she had told Marcus she hadn't signed up for this level of chaos and that she had thought he was more settled than this. The man who had built her a beach house with my money was no longer the wealthy, stable, dependable man she thought he was. Turns out a lot of that stability had been mine. The beach house? I sold it. I took the proceeds and paid off the last of Magnolia & Co.'s debt that had been quietly accumulating because of his withdrawals. I gave every employee a bonus. I expanded the team. Magnolia & Co. had its best revenue year ever the following spring. And Marcus? Last I heard, he's renting a one-bedroom apartment. He sees the kids on his scheduled weekends, and he is, by all accounts, a better father now than he was as a husband, which I'm grateful for my children's sake, even if I have no interest in his life otherwise. I've told you this entire story because I know that somewhere in the people listening to me right now, there is a woman who is sitting exactly where I sat. Maybe you've already found out. Maybe you suspect, but don't have proof yet. Maybe you're in the middle of the fight and it feels endless and you're exhausted and you're starting to wonder if it was even worth it to push back. I want to tell you, it is worth it. Every single day of exhaustion and uncertainty and legal paperwork and painful realizations, it is worth it. Not because revenge feels as good as you imagine it will. Honestly, the moment the judge signed those final papers, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt tired. I felt relieved. I felt, more than anything, free. Free in a way I hadn't felt in years. Maybe in a way I had never felt in that marriage. Because the person I had been slowly becoming, smaller, less certain, more careful about taking up space, she started coming back. She remembered that she had built a company from a one-bedroom apartment. She remembered that she had raised 2 extraordinary children while running a business while navigating a collapse. She remembered who she was. That's the real win. Not the courthouse, not the beach house, not Marcus losing Vanessa or sitting in his one-bedroom apartment. The real win was the morning I woke up in my own home, in a bed that was entirely mine, with my children down the hall, and I thought, for the first time in longer than I can remember, I am exactly where I am supposed to be. If you made it to the end of this story, thank you. Genuinely. These stories are not easy to tell. They are not easy to hold, but they matter. Because every woman who hears a story like mine and recognizes something in it, every woman who sits a little straighter, who calls the attorney, who stops shrinking and starts building her case, that matters. If this resonated with you, leave a comment below. Tell me where you are in your story. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, share it with them. Sometimes the most powerful thing one woman can do for another is simply say, I see you, and I promise you, it gets better. I'll see you in the next one.